everyone, so this is the last section to do with animal behaviour. So it's on page 16 of your notes and it's altruistic behaviour. So altruism is the characteristic of being selfless, which kind of flies in the face of a lot of things that we consider when we're thinking about survival of the fittest or an individual surviving. But what we need to remember is going back to the things that I said previously, this is more to do with the species survival. So it's about the greater good. So you will often find individuals in particular species will act in a way that actually puts them at a disadvantage or can even directly hinder their survival in order to allow or facilitate another member of their species to survive. Okay, so it's very much to do with sacrificing. But why do it? If you are not directly benefiting your own survival and the passing on of your own genetics, why on earth would you want to help another? So this is the interesting aspect to it. So I'd say it's kind of for the greater good, but also we're going to talk specifically about kin selection. So kin is another word for members of your family. And what we have is certain species will make sacrifices according to how closely related they are to the individual that they are trying to help. So there have been studies done on this in humans that are really interesting. They've taken people and they've given them like a challenge, an unpleasant challenge, something like submerging your face underwater and holding your breath. And they've asked them to do it for the benefit of, so like for a reward of different people at different levels of sort of relatedness. So holding your breath underwater for your mother or for your cousin or for your second cousin. And they found that the more closely related the person is, or the people are, the longer they can go for, the more they will push themselves and sacrifice themselves. So when we're talking about kin selection, and this is the idea, and this happens in quite a lot of sort of insect colonies. I mean, I'm not going to repeat everything that's written in your notes, but we've got things like a lot of hive sort of insects, these eusocial insects, use kin selection quite obviously. But actually, I'll put a link to a website, to an article about this sort of behaviour, because there are lots and lots of examples of it happening in social species, so species that tend to live together in herds or flocks or colonies or hives. Obviously they all have to work together, and you do find a lot of this kin selection and altruistic behaviour occurring with those. So it was a scientist called William Hamilton that really looked into this, and he came up with a rule about it. So I'll try and just delve into Hamilton's rule a little bit as well, so that you understand exactly what that means. So if we're thinking about the property or the tendency for an individual to be altruistic, you can argue that that is a genetic predisposition. So it may be that you have extreme altruists, so individuals that will really sacrifice themselves for the benefit of others. Now, what that means is, if you have that and it's a genetic cause, which basically is what Hamilton's saying, it's genetically determined how altruistic you are as an individual. If you are one of those individuals and you sacrifice yourself so you don't necessarily survive or you don't necessarily reproduce, then surely all those genes for altruism are going to eventually peter out of the gene pool. Are they going to peter out of that species because they're not being selected for? Those individuals with those genes are dying and not reproducing, or they're just not reproducing. But this is why kin selection comes into it. The idea being that maybe it's okay to sacrifice yourself if you are sacrificing yourself to help a family member reproduce. Because obviously the more closely related they are to you, it may be that they have those altruistic genes. They might be recessive, but they are still hopefully going to be passed on. So this altruistic trait passes on through the generations. That's why it's not been wiped out. It's why it continues through evolution, because it does confer a benefit to the species. So Hamilton's rule, which you've got written in the middle of page 16, talks about the R coefficient, so little r, and that refers to how closely related the individuals are. So you've got how closely related they are, You've also got, in with that, you've got B, which is what kind of benefit there is. Like, is it going to have a really big benefit? Your action that you're carrying out, is it worth it? Okay. And then what he's saying is that how closely related you are and how big the benefit is have to outweigh the cost. So that's C, which is the reproductive cost to it all. So it's the idea that it's a cost benefit way up. So the more closely related you are, the bigger the benefit, the more likely you are to carry out that action. Hope that makes sense. So you have that happening in lots and lots of different examples. So you've got all the examples about hive insects, these eusocial ones that are in your booklet that talk about how that works. You've also got sort of mammal examples. So things like alarm calls with prairie dogs do it, meerkats sort of do it. You know, they stick somebody out on a lookout and they are basically putting themselves in risk or at risk because they're out there, they're keeping a lookout, they're making a noise which draws attention to themselves, but they do that to help their family group, and usually they're a set of individuals that are very closely related to them. So that's kin selection with altruistic behaviour. So it's all to do with how genetically related you are. The second form, where we used vampire bats as our example, is reciprocal altruism. And that's the idea that you may put yourself out on a limb or do something that benefits another individual, which is at a cost to yourself, such as vampire bats. If you've got a member of your bat crew that has not obtained enough blood that day, but you've got plenty of it, they will regurgitate, which basically means they will vomit up, regurgitate their blood to feed another bat. But this is different in this example because there is an expectation that that favour is returned. Not instantly, not on the same day, but eventually that bat that you donated your blood to is going to return the favour, either directly to you or to another member of the group. That only works, though, if cheaters are identified. So if there are members of the group that never sort of pay it forward, that never return the favour, that the group collectively will punish them. Because why would you want them in there? They're leeching off you and they're not providing any benefit to all of you. So the users and the abusers in reciprocal altruism have to be identified and they have to be suitably punished or exiled or rejected. Otherwise, reciprocal altruism just breaks down and it doesn't work. So as I said, I will try and put some links onto the Teams chat so you can look at some other examples of this. And as I say, there's one article that I'll put a link to that's really good. It really goes through lots and lots of different examples of kin selection in particular and the reasoning behind it and Hamilton's theory behind it, etc. So if you have any questions, do get in touch. I hope that's been helpful. And just take care. See you soon. Bye.